Hello, Dr. Karen here, and today is Healthy Habits, Healthy Life. And I'm going to be talking about this particular, very consistent habit of mine, and that is taking in bone broth. Now, obviously, this is not a video for my vegetarian or vegan friends, so you can just skip it right now. But if you'd like to keep listening and you are an omnivore or carnivore or whatever, then let's talk about the benefits of bone broth. Now, I had been hearing about the benefits of bone broth from a number of people, including one of my local experts, Kathy Homeyer, and very good friend. And she is a chapter leader for the Weston A. Price Foundation. So let me back up and tell you a little bit about them. Now, Weston A. Price was a dentist, and back in, I believe it was the 30s, Kathy, if you're here, let me know if I got that right, that he decided he was going to go around the world and really research indigenous people or tribes in various different parts of the world, looking for are there any patterns that that are obvious, like why are they so much healthier than the industrialized nations people, right? And as a dentist, he was seeing a lot of like crowding teeth, cavities, narrow jaws, and having to take the wisdom teeth out, and so on and so forth. So he went around and he looked at all these different tribes from all over the place. And some were not, some were like, Inuit, others were like, in the South, others in like Europe, and just all these different countries. And what's very interesting is that he has a book out, by the way, if you want all the details. What was very interesting, there was not a single healthy population that was vegetarian or vegan. Interestingly, or sorry, there wasn't a healthy fertile population that was vegan, as of his research back in the 30s. So he was a little disappointed. My understanding was he was really trying to see a variety of things. Now, one thing is very clear is if you are eating traditional foods the way that our great grandparents made them, then those folks are much healthier than the generation that started eating westernized processed food. So that alone is a huge game changer, right? Avoiding processed foods and really cooking foods from home. There was actually quite a few percentage of these cultures that ate raw food as well, including raw meat, and some of the things that we take for granted, like just buying bread at the store, things like that. If they did eat grains, it was fermented. Like in Mexico, they would use lime to treat the corn. And so the flour that you make is very different from the flour that we see, that we can buy stuff at the store, the different kinds of corn chips. Although I did find corn chips the other day that used the old fashioned method, which was quite interesting. So that was a neat find. And bone broth was one of those staples in many of, not all, but many of those cultures that was considered a golden elixir, if you will, or a high value food. And why is that? Well, it's because the broth that you make by simmering bones on low heat, especially if you put a little bit of acid in there, like organic apple cider vinegar, actually starts to disintegrate some of the minerals out of the bone. And a lot of times the bone comes with cartilage as well, right? So what's happening is it's breaking down the bone into its constituent proteins, minerals, and the components of joints. So you know how people love to take in glucosamine and chondroitin? These are like cartilage pills, if you will. And there's some varying, like how effective is it and all that kind of stuff, right? So why buy these supplements when you can get the actual food? And the nice thing about doing bone broth is that the proportion of minerals and chondroitin and hyaluronic acid and all these different beneficial proteins, glucosamine, right? They're in a proportion that is in a body as opposed to an isolated supplement, which is not connected necessarily with its cofactors. So there's a great book called Nourishing Broths, and that is Kayla Daniels and Sally Fallon Morell, who I have interviewed a number of times on my podcast around this topic of broths and things like that. Gelatin, remember the old fashioned jello used to be made with beef gelatin. Now, gelatin can be made with a hide. So, in other words, like beef hide, pork hide, that kind of thing, does not necessarily have the minerals that are in bone. But the gelatin that you can get from bone broth is very nourishing to your body and super helpful for supporting your body to build bone, to build cartilage, to build like nice skin. Yes, if you want a wrinkle reducer, that's a great thing you can do is create a regimen where you are taking in bone broth on a regular basis. Now, some people are like, oh, I don't have time to make soups and bone broth and things like that. It's actually pretty easy. I'm not spending a lot of time cooking, got to be honest. My husband does most of that, but I am the one that makes the broth. So I have a really big crock pot that you plug in, right? And so if we eat like chicken wings or, a whole chicken, or the other day we had, I think, mutton stew. So we have these big, long bones, shanks, things like that. So I'll actually put them in the freezer if I'm not processing them right away. And then when I'm ready, I'll take them out of the freezer, and then I'll just put all the different bones I can do, just chicken or chicken and beef or whatever. And I'll put them in the crock pot, and then I'll take a kettle and I'll put boiling water, hot water into the crock pot, turn it on to low, and I just have it keep simmering. I don't put a time in there because every 12 hours or so it'll beep and stop. So I just keep pressing on and off, and then it'll keep going. So I have the water, then I have the bones, right? And then the apple cider vinegar is to help break down some of those products. If you put too much, it'll get a little like sour tasting. So I usually put like 1 or 2 teaspoons in that big crock pot. Now, classically, you can actually soak it for an hour, but I don't bother. I just turn it on because it takes a while to heat up anyway, right? Even if you have the hot water, it's not going to boil right away. So I just put the vinegar in. Sometimes I'll put the salt and spices then. Sometimes I'll do it later. I don't think it really matters. But you do whatever you really like to do. And then I'll look in my fridge to see what leftovers I have, especially vegetable leftovers. Sometimes I have, leftover broccoli that we didn't eat, or carrots or cabbage or a half cut onion that's been in the fridge for 2 days, right? Parsley that started to wilt. I mean, things like that. It's great. You can actually put that right in the broth. I've even done apples and it makes it a little sweeter. I've done like, had a sweet potato that was, starting to go soft. I didn't really want to eat it any other way. I just peeled off all the like soft parts and just plunked that right in there. Celery is another great one. So it's a great way to like, get rid of leftovers as well. And you have a second chance because, in terms of, you may buy your chicken, you may buy, your beef, and you're already eating that, but then you have a second life for everything that you bought. So therefore it's very economical as well by making the bone broth. And so depending on the type of bones you have, it's a different length of time. In general, fish broth, I know some people are like, oh, I don't like get fish bones, but I actually go to the sushi place in town and kind of like, over the years got to know the owners. So when I come in periodically, they'll actually give me, bags of salmon fish heads. Yes, I know, sounds kind of weird, right? But I'm Chinese, so we eat almost every part of the animal. If we're going to eat animal products, we eat almost every part, and those that don't eat animals are monks. So so fish heads, a lot of different bones, right, and cartilage and things like that. And so for fish, it's only 4 hours. Yes, you only need 4 hours to get the gelatin out. For chicken and turkey is a little longer, about 12 to 24 hours. And then beef, lamb, or some of the bigger bones, especially beef, bison, that kind of thing, it takes 24 hours. So, or you can do a little bit longer. So I just keep turning on and off, the crock pot until I reach that time. Approximately, I let it cool enough to put into glass mason jars, and then put a lid on. I put it in the fridge. If it's still a little warm, I put a towel underneath it just so the warmness hopefully doesn't penetrate and crack my fridge glass. And yeah, and if you happen to have like bone marrow, bones, things like that, you may get a lot of fat. And I talked to Sally Fallon Morell about that. She says to throw out the fat because you cooked it for so long, it's potentially rancid. So it's different from rendering lard and things like that, which is a different procedure, which I do not do. So the really cool thing is you don't want to take the fat out until it's been in the fridge. And say you have like 2 or 3 or 4 mason jars full of bone broth, right? And you're not going to use it all at once. What you want to do is keep the fat on top as a sealant. Yes, as a layer to seal it, and it'll actually last longer than if you did not have the fat layer. So only take the fat layer off where, it usually comes off very easily with a spoon or just a butter knife, flip it into the garbage. And then you have, a lower fat broth. Saturated fat is very healthy for you, helping your cell membranes and things like that. It's just that if you're eating fat, Sally was saying not necessarily would you want fat that's been in there cooking for 24 hours, so I just want to make sure you know that. And so people are like, oh, I don't want to make bone broth. You don't have to. Like, people think they just have to drink it straight. You don't have to drink it straight. I drink it straight, but you don't have to drink it straight. So you can make it into a stew, right? So the bone broth can become a stew. It can become your butternut squash soup. You can actually cook rice in it. You can even cook like savory type pancakes. If you need water, you can put a teaspoon or a tablespoon of broth. So there's many different things you can make with it. It doesn't have to be just drinking it like a golden elixir every day. Have to say it's the cheapest golden elixir ever, and it's very, very effective. And you can buy it commercially. It has coming so hot to and in style to drink bone broth that people like Kobe Bryant and Gwyneth Paltrow, they're making it more mainstream. So there are many, many more companies that offer organic bone broth. Kettle and Fire just happens to be one that I use a lot of, and I get a great deal. They have great deals, so I buy from them. They also have things like beef bone broth chili and regenerative chicken and beef broth, and not everybody has regenerative organic, so I buy from them. But there's other companies now cropping up all over the place. So I would say try it, taste it, see which ones you like the best. Of course, it's cheapest if you make it yourself, but if you don't want your whole house smelling like broth, right, you can definitely purchase it. And the other strategy I also use is bone broth powder for smoothies. So most of the time now I'm using Perfect Amino Meal, which is by Dr. David Minkoff, and I interviewed him on my podcast not that long ago about amino acid balance. And so I really like the taste of and the assimilation rate, which is 99% of the protein in that. So I make a lot of my smoothies that way. That being said, if I do choose another non-vegan powder alternative, it may not be perfectly proportioned like Dr. Minkoff's Perfect Amino Meal Powder, but I would use, for example, organic bone broth powder. And oftentimes it comes in just vanilla or chocolate, right? Kind of boring, I know, but that's what it comes in. So Organics is one of the brands that I use for that. And Thrive Market, it's another brand. So I can show you where you can find some of those if you're interested. So I will make my smoothies using the bone broth protein. In fact, I got to tell you, looking at some of the data that Dr. Minkoff shared, whey protein, pea protein in general, like if you just buy, commercial pea protein, what else? Other types of, protein powders just don't get assimilated into the body. So you're literally peeing out money, or that it gets converted to fat, which most of us don't need more of. So I really like his powder. And of course, I'm a science nerd, so I really like some backup there in science. However, bone broth is a great food to use overall. Sarah says, I love bone broth. My mom used to make it. Yeah, yeah. It makes it so good, right? My mom actually does that as well. Now, my mom was concerned because of increase of heavy metals, lead levels. Is that possible? That is possible. It's possible with a lot of different foods. Now, as the animal gets bigger, it's possible that if they are exposed to arsenic, lead, those kinds of things, of course, it potentially would be in bone as well. But I got to tell you, there's a lot of also heavy metals and other things like, spinach and, things like that, right? So I would say, bless it, muscle test it, and do the best you can. Um, I really feel, in addition to uh, going gluten free, dairy free, going paleo many, many years ago, which really helped me with my autoimmune conditions. The addition of bone broth has been really instrumental. In fact, I have better skin now than I did when I was 14. Yeah, 14 was a nightmare. I have better skin now than I did when I was 7. I've had skin stuff for a lot of my youth and was very embarrassed, low self esteem, whether it be like rashes or eczema or zits all over my face, my legs. I mean, it was just really, really terrible. And now that I have this habit of having the bone broth, it's been super, super nourishing. And I know, my system loves to take it in. Now, if you do your bone broth and you go too long, what'll happen is the gelatin part will break apart and it's still good. You're like, oh, I didn't get gelatin. It's still good. It's still good. It's you actually broke it down even further, so you have even less digestion. But I got to tell you, the gelatin is super fun. Now, one of the best ways of getting gelatin, like really, really like high concentrations, and we're talking like, good for your joints, not just your skin, is chicken feet. So we have local farmers that I buy from every single week, and one of them in particular, Mace Chasm Farms, they grow their animals very sustainably, and it's not like feedlots and things like that, right? So the chickens run around and pasture fed and pasture raised and all that kind of stuff. So the Chinese way is we eat all parts of the animal. Not a fan of liver, but used to be made to eat it. Anyway, so chicken feet is actually kind of a dim sum thing. Dim sum is like a Chinese lunch. You go out and there's like all these little plates of things, and so chicken feet is just one of those regular dishes that we have all the time, and I really liked it because I really like the texture of the cartilage. So chicken feet is sold for $5. Yeah, like $5, from the local farmer, and it is so full of gelatin. It is amazing. And yesterday we actually made a mutton stew for some local guys that we do martial arts with, and they loved it. It was great. And none of them got, turned off by me telling them that it was chicken feet broth, but it's just gelatin. And so you see it after it's been in the fridge, it's jelly. It's really, really good for you. So I want to show you a couple of pictures in case you're like, gelatin, what are you talking about? So let me share. Actually, let me go here and let's share a couple of pictures. Okay, so let's do, hang on, let me see there we go. Let me close these guys. All right, good. Okay, so I just want to show you, there's a link here. Kettle on Fire is some of the bone broth soups that I have. One of my favorites is this one, the coconut curry, and my other favorite, let's go, I can find it here. Let's see, I believe, well, that's just, okay, that's their chicken bone broth. They have bone broth. Oops, let me go. My camera's in the way, so I can't see what I'm clicking here. Okay, so one of my favorites is this one, coconut curry and lime. And then the other one is tom yum chicken. So those are my two favorites there. And this one, the tom yum, because I'm Asian, this is more of a, what is that, Thai? Is that Thai or Malaysian? Tom yum. think it's Thai, right? Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. Okay. Cancel, cancel clear. I'm not embarrassed. Okay. So this is great because we just put vegetables in it and we put like literally like just drop shrimp in it or drop salmon or some sort of halibut or something in there and boom, you got a really, really, really quick dinner. So you don't even have to make the broth. Okay, so the other thing I was going to show you is the gelatin. So this is what it looks like when it's, when it's been in the fridge. It literally is jelly. When you have cooked it. And like I said, if you cook it longer than the prescribed time for the type of bone that you're using, it will stop being gelatin, but it just is just broken down further, but you still have all the benefits of it. This is what I'm talking about. When you put it in mason jars, you will get a layer of fat that comes to the top. Unless you're using the broth right away, this layer of fat will actually protect the broth from going bad. So I have used broth, up to 7 days after making it if it's in the fridge. If you put it in the freezer, I would highly recommend you use some other type of carton. Make sure that if you're using some sort of plastic, that the broth is completely cool, so you're not like disintegrating the plastic right into your broth. And the reason is because I've broken several mason jars in the past because I didn't leave enough room for it to expand. Anyway, so. Usually I use it up within those days. Now, if you have dogs, a lot of people will make bone broth for dogs, not them for themselves, which is completely kind of funny. If you have dogs, you want to avoid, some things that might make them sick, like onions, garlic. Although, maybe garlic will help with parasites, but in general, they just recommend just plain bone broth. So if you want to make bone broth for Pooch and you, then you can just avoid some of those trigger ingredients, and you can look that up online. Here's another picture of the gelatin here. Yep. So you can make fish broth, bone broth, beef, lamb, all sorts of different kinds of bone broths. Yeah. So you can be creative, and there is a book. Let me actually just go and show you the book as well. It's called Nourishing Broth. Let me pull it up so I can show it to you. Okay, there we go. So let me go and share my screen again. Share screen. Okay. Okay, there we go. So this is the book I was telling you by Sally Fallon Morell and Kayla Daniels. So I've interviewed them both a number of times on my podcast. So this is like the Bible, if you will, of broth by two people who have been teaching for a very long time. And Sally Fallon Morell is the longtime president of the Weston A. Price Foundation. And you can get a lot of information on their website for free as well. So I've linked to that near this video so you can look stuff up. Would love to, hear what have you been doing with broth. Do you have any special recipes that you really like? Athletes, right? We've got athletes doing bone broth now. It's kind of all the rage. So yeah, might as well jump on the bandwagon, right? So softer, more supple skin, collagen, for not just your skin and joints, but just the collagen is the most abundant protein in the body. So you've got these other minerals and hyaluronic acid, and you've got the glucosamine and chondroitin and all these other wonderful things. Some of it we don't even know. I think the benefits outweigh the potential risks. And you can always bless your food, right? Afterwards as well. So that's the Healthy Habits, Healthy Life video for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Feel free to share this video if it's helpful and resonates with you. And make sure if you are on my YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you can follow along as some other videos I have coming up. And also hit the notification bell so you'll know immediately if I go live. Until next time, lots of love and happy bone brothing. Bye for now.